Hey there, I'm DPadGamer, and as you may know, on April 5th, 2019, Enter the Gungeon received its final update, A Farewell to Arms. To honor the occasion, some of my viewers suggested that I make this video, so here we are. Let's look at some of the Easter eggs in Enter the Gungeon, and just so you know, there will be spoilers throughout the videos as we discuss weapons, bosses from the various updates, but anything included in the newest update will be relegated to the very end of the video after this timestamp. If you've played this game for any length of time, you've no doubt caught on to the fact that Dodge Roll loves referencing anything and everything they can. Guns, items, bosses, you name it. Like the Brick Breaker, a blocky weapon that shoots green turtle shells, and mentions in its Ammonomicon entry, legends tell of a mysterious alchemist who could turn bricks into coins, turtles, mushrooms, and a wide variety of other things. A very obvious reference to Super Mario Bros. And of course, you can't talk about the Brick Breaker without mentioning the Stuffed Star, an item whose usage references the Invincibility Star from Mario, while its fuzzy exterior resembles a Luma from Mario Galaxy. And it synergizes with a gun called Polaris, which itself is a direct homage to the first gun from Cave's story, the Polaris Star. Sometimes the weapons available let you live out your dreams of being a certain character, but in a game with a bit more bullets. Like, for example, the hero of Hyrule. You can weaponize rupees and pottery with the Killin, zip around with the grappling hook, and even summon a chicken using the chicken flute, which will live up to its inspiration by summoning a horde of chickens after taking enough damage, all a loving nod to The Legend of Zelda. The only issue here with pretending to be Link is that he already sort of exists in this game in the form of the Lost Adventurer, a pointy-eared, green hat-wearing guy who you find out there in the Gungeon. A lot of his lines reference the Zelda series as well, like in the Hollow where he mentions that he got into a race with the Gravedigger and ended up here. If only I had some heavy boots, I wouldn't slip on this ice. Callbacks of callbacks, there's also an old man that can be found exclaiming that it's dangerous to go alone, and then he gives the player a single weapon or item. And we can't forget the bullet's default weapon called Blasphemy, which will shoot out energy beams while at full health, just like the courageous hero Link's sword in the original game. You could also go around fighting stuff with the Heroine, a blaster capable of taking down any kind of space pirate. It's a love letter to Samus Aran's weapon from Metroid. By default, it has a normal energy beam attack, but if you have certain accessories, the resulting synergy will let you modify it. For example, Frost Bullets turn it into an ice beam, which, as you might expect, shoots ice. Having Hot Lead lets you fire plasma beams, and the Shock Round will allow it to fire wave beams. Of these alternate blasters, my favorite type involves the Pig. Having this seemingly useless passive item causes a pig to follow you around. When you take too many shots, the pig will valiantly jump in front of the killing blow, sacrificing itself, and just like Baby Metroid's sacrifice in Super Metroid, this grants you the Hyper Beam for 30 seconds. Now if that blaster isn't enough, there's also the Roll Bomb, which is a callback to Samus's bomb ability while in the Morph Ball form. That's cool, but more importantly, having both the Roll Bomb and the Heroine at the same time grants a synergy called Why Can't You Crawl? A weird reference to an infamous Miiverse post as seen here. It's a good question. They've put just as much work, if not more, into the Mega Hand, which is a reference to the Blue Bomber himself, Mega Man. For this one, there's 8 different synergies, each modifying the Mega Hand into a close approximation of the weapons obtained from the 8 Robot Masters from Mega Man 2. We'll run through them real quick. The Balloon Gun creates the Air Shooter, either the Mega Dowser or the Bubble Blaster gives you the Bubble Lead, Bullet Bore turns it into the Crash Bomber, either having the Camera or the Aged Bell gives you Time Stopper, Hot Lead instead of Plasma gives you Atomic Fire, Buzzkill gives you the Metal Blade, Boomerang gives you a quick boomerang, and finally the Mahogany turns into a Leaf Shield. It's also worth pointing out that some of the developers must love the Metal Gear series, because there's a lot of it. First off, there's the iconic cardboard box, which works as you'd expect. There's also the SAA, which is a solid reference to Revolver Ocelot, its ricochet ability calling back to Ocelot's inhuman ability to just shoot at a random wall and have it hit the target. Its spinning animation is akin to his famous gun twirling exhibition, and the Ammonomicon entry even mentions exhilarating reload time.
This reload time is exhilarating.
There's also the Patriot, referencing the gun used by the boss in Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater with its Ammonomicon entry headed by Gun Eater, and we can't forget the Nanomachines, Sun.
Nanomachine Sun.
And of course, the big brutish bird boss named the Gatling Gull is a stand-in for the Vulcan Raven from Metal Gear Solid. Next up we have Dark Souls, one of my favorite series right behind Banjo-Kazooie. Firstly, there's the Armor of Thorns, working just like the Knight of Thorns Kirk set from Dark Souls, increasing the damage done to enemies by rolling into them. There's also the Shield of the Maiden, which in its entry, the phrase, "Shields are nice, but not if they engender passivity," just like the description of shields in Bloodborne. And of course there's the Gun Soul, a passive item allowing you to respawn upon death with one chance to recover your items if you interact with the soul left where you died. Its synergy with the Old Knight's Flask, aka the Estus Flask, is called Praise the Gun, creating bonfires in every shop and next floor's elevator. And then there's also the Crestfaller, a depressing gun named after the depressing crestfallen knight that hangs out near the main hub of each Dark Souls game. Now, you may have run into the Orange, a item that, if found on the ground, is represented by a large 3D looking sprite. In its entry, it's mentioned, "You're not Alexander," and your style, it's impetuous, your defense impregnable. These seemingly unrelated points are all a reference to a game called God Hand, in which you can find health pickups in the form of large oranges, and for some reason, enemies love exclaiming, "You're not Alexander," during gameplay. And the rest of the entry is actually from the same Mike Tyson quote that the bit about Alexander is pulled from. Next, it's worth highlighting the AU gun, or Gold Gun, which is referencing GoldenEye 007, and the Gold Gun from that game with its ability to kill anything in a single shot. Along with that, there's the Clob, I think that's how it's pronounced, I'm not sure, which is described in its entry as being the worst gun in Gungeon, living up to the gun of a very similar name from GoldenEye, where it's also the worst gun. And we can't forget about its synergy with the Makarov being called No Odd Job, referencing the obnoxious character of the same name from that game. Now, there's a bunch more guns and items referencing games, many of which aren't exactly subtle, so you would be wrong to angrily write, "Those aren't Easter eggs," but then again, if I don't mention them, I'll get angry comments about, "Oh, you didn't mention these!" So I'm gonna pick the lesser of two evils and run through them real quick. Okay, so the Hyperlight Blaster is modeled after a combination of the gun and blade from Hyperlight Drifter. The Very Fast, made of meat's weapon called the Super Meat Gun, comes from Super Meat Boy, and in a similar vein, the Tearjerker references the Binding of Isaac, though it does have a synergy with the D-pad item called Wrath of the Blam, a play on the title of the game DLC, all about opening a Euro shop. The Alien Sidearm and its synergies are references to the Covenant Energies weapons from the Halo series, and the very inappropriately named Heck Blaster is a reference to the Plasma Blaster from Earthworm Jim. And the Light Gun is a nod to the NES Zapper and its use in Duck Hunt, going off of the duck you shoot out at the end. We can't forget about the Machine Fist, a combination Gatling gun and rocket punch launcher modeled after the weapon of the same name from Final Fantasy VII, with its entry title, Avalanche of Bullets, being named after the group its user Barrett, I'm not actually sure, I barely played that game, founded, called Avalanche. There's also the Banana, which fires an explosive banana, which explodes into more bananas, which is likely referencing Worms and its Banana Bomb, which itself is a reference to the 1991 MS-DOS game called Gorillas. Now, as someone named Sam, I can't not mention the Serious Cannon, calling back to the weapon of the same name from Serious Sam. And of course the BSG, or Big Shooty Gun, is a direct reference to Doom's BFG, or Big Friendly Gun? And then the Cog of Battle is a play on the title of the game its mechanic is pulled from, Gears of War. And then we have the Mine Cutter, which is a direct translation of the iconic necro-slaughtering plasma cutter from Dead Space. And we can't forget Super Hot.
Super hot. Super hot.
And the last of the gaming-specific things is the Master of Unlocking, a passive item which is actually a reference to Jill Valentine from Resident Evil, who is referred to as a Master of Unlocking.
Jill, here's a lockpick. It might be handy if you, the Master of Unlocking, take it with you.
Now, TV stuff. The Quad Laser is a reference to the gun used by the 2D alien race known as Mooninites from Aqua Teen Hunger Force. And much like Dark Souls, Game of Thrones seems to get referenced all over the place, and here, it's no different. Here we have the Iron Coin, an item which upon use takes out all enemies in a random unexplored room with its entry title Valar Morghulis. It's a pretty cool representation of that time in Game of Thrones where years-old spoiler strikes a deal with no one, and some people end up dying. And of course, the Bullet King with his lead throne is a reference to the series' iconic Iron Throne. And both the wind-up gun and the 7-leaf clover items are referencing Futurama, which appears in the episode War is the H Word and Luck at the Five-Fish, respectively. Also, the wind-up gun has a really nice tune, and it just sounds really cool. Also, if you don't know, when you first meet the NPC Professor Gupton, the unintelligible language it speaks in is actually the alien alphabet from Futurama. Now, as for movie references, There's the backup gun, a backwards-facing gun described as another incredible use of tape, all a callback to the iconic 1988 Christmas film Die Hard, in which the main character tapes his Beretta onto his back. Of course, the passive item R2-G2 is supposed to be R2-D2 from Star Wars. You got the tiny grass chopper, a gun that's a reference to the noisy cricket from Men in Black, and then the proton backpack, which is just the proton pack from Ghostbusters. There's also the compressed air tank, which oddly enough shoots live sharks, which I think should be illegal, but it's also a reference to the 1975 movie Jaws, with its "smile you son of a" synergy with the M1, being a nod to Martin Brody's final line before game-ending that shark at the end of the movie. Also, spoilers for Jaws, I guess? Whatever. The Deck Forward, or Deckard as the cool kids say, is a reference to the gun used by Deckard Cain in Diablo 3, or that or Blade Runner, either way. And finally, the High Dragon boss fight with its entry image is actually a reference to the dragon from The Hobbit, which is known by many names like Smog, Smoog, Benadryl, Cumbersome. I'm sure you know who I'm talking about. And now, before we move on to the dreaded spoiler-filled zone that is the Farewell to Arms update, I'd like to mention the challenge mode added in the supply drop update. In that mode, each room has 1 to 3 different modifiers active, which changes things up. A bunch of the modifiers, both in name and mechanic, are references to all kinds of stuff, so let's quickly go through those. In alphabetical order, the Bloblin Rancher, with its propensity for spawning the goopy enemy, is a reference to Slime Rancher. Cursed ceramics are a direct translation of the cursed jars found in Dark Souls 2. The worst of the series, don't fight me on that, you know I'm right, the game. Don't Blink, with the Division-based scariness, is named after the Doctor Who episode featuring weeping angels. Explosive pyres are a reference to Destiny 2, I think. I didn't play that game. Extremely Bad Chest, with the chessboard pattern of poison, is probably named after the mobile game Really Bad Chest, which I think that makes sense. Ghost in the Shell is referencing the incredible live-action movie featuring Scarlett Johansson called Ghost in the Shell. And High Stress is no doubt named after the stress mechanic taken from Darkest Dungeon. And finally, thermal clips are named after the ammo of the same name from Mass Effect 1. Now finally, spoiler warning. At this point, we'll be discussing guns, items, and stuff from the final update of Enter the Gungeon called A Farewell to Arms. If you don't want spoilers, don't continue watching. If you hear this warning and continue and then complain in the comments, I hope everybody points and laughs in your general direction. Now, one of the new weapons is called the third-party controller, which allows you to attach onto enemies and control them. When you combine it with a new item called the Cat Bullet King Throne, it forms the synergy Mad Cats, which is named after the infamous company of the same name, but that company has a Z at the end because they're cool like that. There's also the Knight's Gun, a reference to Shovel Knight, and is capable of digging stuff up by reloading after emptying your clip. It also has a synergy with the Shield of the Maiden called Shield Knight, like the opposite of day. A reference to the character called Shield Knight, like the character. Speaking of Dark Souls, there's one new item called the Sunlight Javelin, which is a nice homage to the weaponized miracle known as Sunlight Spear, wielded by Sunlight Warriors, like good old Solera Vestora himself. It even synergizes with 2 of the items mentioned earlier, Gunsoul and Old Knight's Flask, which is referred to with a Praise the Sun emoticon. The Tetraminator is a reference to Tetris. Yeah, I know, it's pretty obvious, but someone would complain if I didn't mention it. There is also the Shadow Clone item, which is this game's one and only reference to the anime called Naruto. It even includes an oddly placed "Believe It" in its entry, a callback to Naruto's obnoxious catchphrase from the English version of the show. Also, Boruto is not that bad. And now, the most spoileriest spoilers, the update brings with it a brand new level known as the RNG department, which unlike its name, doesn't actually use RNG. At the end of it though, you're faced off with Aghanim, named after Aghanim from A Link to the Past, not to be confused with Aghanimon, a Digimon that popped up after a Google search for sprites of Aghanim. This time around, he's introduced as Cam Clark as Aghanim, while piloting a helicopter. Disappearance of his is actually referenced to the Hind D helicopter battle from Metal Gear Solid, as Cam Clark is the name of the voice actor who played Liquid Snake from that game, though he was credited under the pseudonym of James Flinders. Either way, it's a really neat way to end the RNG department, and as it happens, it's how we're going to end this video. Thank you so much for watching, I'll see you in the next one.